improvements and repairs to the system to account for increased costs for the Central Valley Water Reclamation Facility, keep up with the inflationary costs, minimize the impact on ratepayers, and to try and get those ratios to debt coverage in the days cash on hand to 180 for days cash on hand and instead above 1.5 for debt coverage ratios. But we also want it to be competitive with surrounding cities so that Murray doesn't get bad rap. So, with that in mind, these are the proposed rates as we see, and we'll show those key ratios again that would need to be implemented over the next couple of years. Beginning on April 1st, 2022, the base rate will increase 35%. In 2023 on April 1st, an increase of 25%. In 2024, 15%. And then on April 1st in 2025, an increase of 5%, which would increase every year, April 1st, until otherwise amended. Those help to maintain increases in just operating costs and things like that. So that hopefully if you have a small annual increase, you don't ever have to do big increases. They kind of keep you on schedule. And if you ever find yourself where you're bringing in too much money, then you can pull back and make adjustments.
So you say a small increase. I mean, 35% is a big.
That one
That's
is.
a huge increase.
Yeah, no, sorry, that was in regards to a 5% annual at the end of the schedule. So if you maintain, that's what it means on that last row, April 1st, 2026, and then increase until otherwise, or I mean, a 5% increase until otherwise amended. That's saying that 5% at the end would be held in perpetuity unless the council decides to go somewhere else. And that's the smaller increase that I was talking about that you do annually with the hope that that just helps you maintain with the cost, increasing cost of operations, salaries, all sorts of things that will slowly go up. If you maintain your rates at a flat rate, they fail to meet those, and then you'll find yourself again at some point having to increase by 35%. So, sorry for confusion on that. Thanks for making me clarify.
Yeah, I mean, all of this is just kind of a big surprise, I mean, all of a sudden, we're going to have to sell our constituents and our citizens on a 35% rate. So I think we really need to understand what that's about so we can explain it to them, and it's getting kind of confusing to me. So thank you for explaining it as clearly as you can. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and definitely just to speak to that, to hopefully clarify again, that these rates were recently visited and there was an increase, but it is mainly the driving factor is the unexpected increase in the Central Valley costs that are coming, that were not anticipated, that 120 million increase, but not the Murray, but all of that bill, that they have a significant share in covering that. So that's something you can't foresee. So that's where that is coming from. And these flow rates now, so those were the base rates, and the flow rates are based on the 100 cubic feet. So starting in April 1st, 2022, this year, an increase of 20%. And then in April 1st, 2023, increase of 3%. And that would, again, continue on in perpetuity as just kind of a maintaining the increase of the increasing cost. So 3% instead of 5%, like the base rates. And then there's a new factor here, the Central Valley rate. So the Central Valley fee will help the city cover that initial cost, and it kind of puts the weight of where that cost is coming from at where it really is coming from. Instead of increasing base rates to even more to cover a Central Valley cost, this is kind of saying we have to have this fee because of the increased cost. There's a balance there. There is still some that will be accounted for in the base rate, but this just kind of helps everyone see there's a cost associated with the improvements at Central Valley. So this, putting the cost here and labeling it as such, kind of will help us lessen the fee increases on the base and flow rates and helps people understand where the costs are going to. So it starts in 2022 on April 1st at $12 and continues through next April 1st, 2023 at $12. And then it will start to hand off as the base rates increase, these will decrease as kind of an adjustment. This goes from April 1st, 2024, then it decreases to $11. April 1st, 2025, it goes to $8. And then April 1st, 2026, down to $6, where it will maintain itself until otherwise amended. So that's kind of laying it out so that everyone can see it and hear it. But let me show you this chart, which I think will be more helpful to show you where these increases and how they'll affect the actual rates. So the base rates are there at the top, and you can see the percent change and how it affects those base rates directly below it. And what this is showing you is that the 35% increase, yeah, it will increase that by about $4. About $4. And then the Central Valley rate at $12 comes in. And also it shows that the flow rates are going to increase kind of slower. And having more of your income coming in at the base rate is a more predictable way to kind of structure your revenue, because that's always going to come in based on how many customers you have. And that, so if people start using less, sometimes you end up not having enough funds because you're putting more of your income into a variable flow rate. So that's why in this case it's sometimes better to have, if you're going to have more increase, to put it in the base rate. And those people are essentially paying to help the system. So the flow rates are there to help also, to make sure that those who use more pay a little bit more, but the base rate helps the city have financial stability. So, and this is what this looks like for the residents. So on the far left there, you see where the rates are currently, and at the bottom you can see a total monthly charge based on 10 units of flow. So, so you can see that flow rate is at $28.88. That would be based on 10 units of flow. So in 2023, based on that same fee, that same usage, I mean, you can see it would go to about $59.74. And keep in mind, $12 of that we are associating with the Central Valley. So that's more than half of that increase is tied to the Central Valley fee. The good news here is, even with those small increases, like we talked about, the 5% on the base rate, the 3% on the flow rate, as you can see, we've tried to structure this so that this first initial jump is really kind of the only initial jump you have. Because that's, even though they're right next to each other, it's 2023, 2027. So over the next 4 years, it's only an increase of about $6 on the ratepayers. So trying to help get it there, and then as we decrease the Central Valley fee, even though they're going to see their base rates come up, they're kind of decreasing on one side, increasing on another to kind of balance out. And just take that onus off of the Central Valley fee, but we want it to be up front in the beginning, that's where a lot of this cost is coming from. So this is where that puts us then with the key ratios. As you remember in the beginning, they were in the red, but this new rate structure helps pay for the increased debt service, the capital costs that are coming down the line, and doesn't initially push the days cash on hand into the green, but it moves it towards that, so that you know that you're bringing money in as you go on. And as you get into about fiscal year 2026, then it should be to where it needs to be. And about fiscal year 2027, you'll probably be looking at trying to do another little reevaluation, make sure you're in a good spot. But if our calculations and projections hold true, this should have the city right where it needs to be to absorb the increasing costs from Central Valley, to fund the capital expenses that are coming, and to account for increasing costs of operations and managing the sewer fund. So that is the presentation. I don't know if Ben had anything or that you want to add before we go into questions.
So I want to bring out the fact that that you're aware of that that Murray received some money for ARPA funds. Sorry, my brain went dead there for a second. So in the amount of 5.4 or something like that. So this model, after talking to the mayor's office, this model is including 1 million of that money in here. Otherwise, this increase would be considerably more than what it's showing now. So I just wanted to bring that out, that we're trying to find what we can. And we've also minimized the projects that we need to get done as well and stretch them further out into the future so that, and of course we'll be watching those, and if we have to do something, then, you know, maybe we can bond. But at this point in time, we think that everything's going to be okay. So this model that you're seeing here, it includes those things built into it. So we've kind of cut and tried to maintain where we can. So, questions that you have?
Questions? I'll let you all start and bring it home.
Well, I already started with my question. I mean, this is a huge increase, and you know, all of a sudden to have to approve this. I mean, we learn about it this week, and then in 2 weeks we have to vote on it, and then we have to listen to what our community has to say, and I don't think it's going to be a real positive. So I guess I just need help with explaining to them, and I can kind of do that. I'm not sure how it's going to fall, but I do have concerns about the response that I'm going to receive, and it just seems as if we don't really have a lot of choice here, and kind of puts us in a bad position. So, and you're probably already aware of that, Danny. So
We are. We've thought through this, and we've worked with the mayor's office to try to, and Brenda has been a great help to us trying to figure out the best way to move forward with it as well. We know it's going to be hard. Unfortunately, we're under an order to get this done at the plant. We're under construction, and there's a couple of projects that are still left to bid, and we're concerned that these projects that are still left to bid will come in even higher than what we've anticipated here. And the reason for the immediate jump, obviously, is to meet those debt obligations that we already have, and then to help us meet the debt obligations for the future as well. So all of these are not cash funded, they're bond funded, essentially.
So we can say it's not due to poor management. It's not due to something that could have been controlled that wasn't. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I do, and that's a great point, and this was completely out of our control. Everything was working really well until 2019, and that's when things started to go a little awry with the work that actually hit us more in 2020 than anything. That's when the bids really started coming in higher, much higher than and completely anticipated. And most of the projects have been coming in now about 30% higher than normal, and that's why if you look at the cost difference, it's about 30% overall. And it's not a laughing matter, and for us, it hit us hard as well. all of the entities. There are 7 entities that own the treatment plant. We're just a small portion of this, and so some of these other entities are having to do some hard things as well. But we understand that, and we're gonna be prepared to send information out so that people understand that it's based on our water quality standards at the treatment plant, and we're a member owner, and that's where we put our water.
So what other entities, just a couple more
Yeah,
questions.
go ahead.
What other entities are also required to pay portions of this?
So you have there's 2 cities that are owners. One is South Salt Lake, the other is Murray, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And then the districts that are involved in it, starting on the east side of the valley, is Cottonwood Sewer Improvement District, who goes all the way up to Big and Little Cottonwood Canyons. Then there's Mount Olympus Improvement District, which takes in clear up into the Mill Creek area. And then there's coming down on, and they take most of the whole east side of the valley. So they're 2 large entities. Then as we cross over the river, there's Taylorsville Benyon Improvement District, there's Granger Hunter Improvement District, and then there's the Kearns Improvement District. So if you think about that, it takes the center of the valley from mountain to mountain.
Okay.
So that's how big it is. And so we have the largest number of users of this system. So we're in that 700,000 to 800,000 population service.
Okay, so they're all sharing in the expense of this as well?
Yes. Our portion of it is roughly about 8% currently of all of these costs.
Wow.
It has been more until recently. We've done some things to manage our system a little better, and we've been working with Central Valley to get the metering correct, and that has helped us. So we're in that 8% range of ownership, which is the capital costs and the month-to-month operations as well.
Okay. Thank you, Danny. That's helpful.
Okay.
And it just might be helpful to you as well to know that I've also been working on another project with Granger Hunter on their sewer rates as well. And this is they're also very concerned and looking at rate increases as well. So mostly because of this is a big expense that pretty much all the entities that are involved on or with the Central Valley Water Reclamation Facility are having to address. So it's not just something that Murray is going to have to explain as well. So it's going around these entities, unfortunately.
Okay.
With that being said as well, with the Central Valley fee, that is something that most entities are starting to implement. Murray will not be the only one. Just about 4 other entities that go to Central Valley all have a Central Valley based fee. So that will not be, that is not something, it's new to Murray, but not something new.
Rosalba?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. What would happen if, I'm assuming all of this is kind of, the reason why it's so high is because of inflation. Is that correct? And supplies and demand and, okay. And what would happen if we were to receive or participate in any additional funding or grants for this project? Are there any available? I'm sure you guys have looked into this, but if there were just something to come up in the future, would that help with our rate for?
Yeah, absolutely. So if by chance, I'll just tell you that the state of Utah, after the last legislative session and the money that they received from the federal government, ARPA money. They distributed ARPA money to many cities and entities, counties, but the state received quite a bit of money in the amount of probably $250 million to distribute as well. And so they decided that they were going to grant some money to entities for different things, and every entity as part of Central Valley, including Central Valley themselves, put in a request for funding. None of us received anything, and it was, unfortunately, all I can say is very politically driven. But they only chose to give 50 million of that money. So currently there is some talk of another round of 100 million. So there is a chance that we could receive some of that money. And if we do receive that money, then we will come back and say, okay, this is the adjustments that we can make. But until that happens, there's not much we can do, but this is what we need to do to keep moving forward and to be able to meet our obligations. Now, there are some low interest funds with the state, but one of the hard things with the state money with the Division of Water Quality is that we have to meet certain criteria with that. So there's things that are tied to that money, and it might be a low interest, but because of these things that are tied to it, it's not a good deal. It gets more expensive for us to the tune of 10 to 15% more in costs. So we're already 30%. We don't need to go to 45%. So we've got to weigh that. We can go on the open market and get better money with no restrictions. And the last round of bonding that we did, I think it was 1.1%. So we actually have done really well. And as you know, maybe you don't, Justin Zollinger is the finance director at Central Valley, and he's doing everything he can to try to control these costs, working with these contractors, and they're doing all kinds of things to try to mitigate the hardship that we're all facing.
So if the federal infrastructure bill passed, then that would be helpful.
Yeah. So if the state chose to do this 100 million, and even if we got $500,000, that makes a big difference to us. We're a small entity in this, and but we would, even if it was for our own projects, that would free up cash that we're getting to apply to that. And so we're asking for both help with Central Valley and help with our own projects.
Awesome. And I have one last question. Out of those 17 projects, is it with old infrastructure that we need to update? Are there some that are more take precedent than others?
Yeah, so we have a master plan list of projects that we need to do, and some of it's driven by development, and some of it's driven by the need to replace and repair. And there are things that we are doing do we have to replace it, or can we rehab it? And so we've reviewed those things, and so this in the slide, what is it, $5.7 million I think we have out of all of those projects. When you consider compared to what Central Valley's spending, it's a drop in the bucket, but it's a lot to us. And so we can't just think that we can just go out and do these whenever we want, because we don't have the cash for it. So we want to be very judicious about the projects that we do and the timing of those projects, pick the most important ones. One might change, a project may change as a result of the need. Maybe a development comes in and we've got to fix a piece of a line that needs to upsize, or something fails on us. So, we want to make sure that we have something to back us up.
Do we have any impact fees to help with that? Is that, do you know?
We do.
Okay,
Yeah, we do have impact fees.
okay.
And we do an impact fee study each time we do a rate study. This time we didn't do it, but we'll be doing that in the future.
All right, that's it for me. Thank you.
Pam, did you want to say something?
Just a couple of questions, really quick. So I'm really worried about the citizens that are on low income. So that's where I'm coming from. And I know this has to happen. I mean, it's out of our hands. It's out of your hands. It's out of everyone's hands because of COVID. I understand all that. And when was the last time this happened? Was it like 10 years ago, 15 years ago? And then when do we project, do you have an idea if the federal government or state government is going to come to us again and say, we need to do this again? Can we be a little bit prepared? Or is it just one of those things that, hey, we need a new car?
Good questions, and I'll try to clarify what I can. So as far as the last question that they asked, if the state's going to come forward, this new plant process is so efficient in its removal processes that we believe that we can meet even the most stringent regulations that even some of the eastern states have instituted. We don't think it'll ever go that direction, but we believe that we can meet those regulations going forward. But again, this plant was built over 30 years ago, and so it's been operational for 35, 36 years. And so it was great technology, and it still is good technology, but it's not as good as the technology-based standards that we've been given, and which means, as you know, just because they can remove it, that's the standard, and we have to remove it to that level.
Is there an equivalent to heat for this type of utility bill that helps those who are having trouble?
I'm not sure I can answer that. I don't think that there is, Brenda.
No, Brenda's shaking her head at me. Oh, thank you. I'm just going to repeat that heat pays all the utilities for those that couldn't hear online. Thank you, Brenda. All right. Thank you for all of the information. You answered lots of questions. And thank you, everybody, for the discussion. We'll move on to number 2, discussion on a zone map amendment from A1 agriculture to R18 low density single family. And we're looking at 1079 East Vine Street. Susan and Jared.
There's a helpful label here that says use the other side. It's good for people like me. Thank you, IT. Exactly how I want. Jared, use the other side.
Yep. Hello. Well, thanks for letting me join the meeting here. This application is from Nathan Shepik for a zone map amendment for the property at 1079 East Vine Street. Yes.
A little louder.
Oh, okay. Thank you. From A1 to R18. Okay, thanks. I'll turn it that way. The property's on the north side of Vine Street, highlighted there in the blue. And it is a 0.79 acres. It's in the A1 zone, so it is already non-conforming to the minimum 1 acre requirement. The property, as you can see highlighted, the areas in green are A1. The pale yellow is the R18 zone. So the property that's highlighted in blue is the subject property that we're talking about. Our future land use and our general plan call for this area to be low-density residential. And low-density residential, the R18 is one of those zone classifications that falls under that designation. Here's just a picture of the property. There is a single-family home on the property at the front of the lot, and a lot of vegetation. And the Planning Commission reviewed this on July 15th, and we sent notices to the surrounding residents. There was no one objecting to it. The Planning Commission made a favorable recommendation, a 5-0 vote to approve the zone change. And the application, the findings for that are based, the 4 items listed there. It is consistent with the general plan. The general plan does allow for some flexibility. It does meet the goals and policies. The zone map amendment, again, is supported by the general plan and our future land use map. And again, the Planning Commission reviewed this on July 15th and had a positive recommendation. So staff and Planning Commission are both recommending that the City Council review this request and approve the request as proposed.
Thank you. Any questions? No? All right. Seems pretty straightforward.
Oh, that was
Thank
too
you.
easy.
Yeah.
I do.
Oh, we do have a question. Sorry.
Oh.
Is there a reason why we're just barely seeing this now from July to, I'm just curious.
Yeah. Good question. Actually, yes, there was some, the intent, good question. The intent of this is the current owner would like to sell it and split the property in half. And they wanted to proceed with that, but so there were some issues with trying to get the property's owners and everything in line with where we could proceed with this process. So I took a little juggling and a little delay in negotiating, so that's why there is a delay on this.
That was my question as well, so thank you.
Perfect.
That's a beautiful area.
Yeah.
So,
It is.
it's
All
my
right.
district. It's
Looks
great.
like you're next as well.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go to the next one then. The next one is an application from J&G Investments. Jonathan Rudd was the applicant. It is for a text amendment to allow twin homes as a permitted use in our R210 zone. R210, you probably didn't even, is a zone that we don't use very often. In fact, there's only one property in the whole city that is currently R210, and that is up on Jeremy Drive. The request is to amend the text to allow what we call land use category 1112, number 1112, which is single-family dwellings attached or a twin home as a permitted use. So I'm going to try to explain the difference between a twin home and a duplex. Currently, duplexes are allowed in the R210. The bottom line difference is duplexes are rental properties and owned by one person. Twin homes will allow for 2 owners, so owner occupied, to own them individually, the units individually, and own the property around it besides just the home.
Susan.
Yeah.
So so the owner buys one of the 2, and they decide to rent the other side out. If they buy both of them, they want to rent them, and it's still a twin home.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. They could do that, yes.
Right.
So here's just a little diagram showing the difference. On the left-hand side is the duplex. You can see the dwelling has a dashed line, so there's 2 units, but it's on one single piece of property. And then on the right hand, where the single-family dwelling attached or twin homes, the dashed line goes between the parcel and the home both. So it has a common wall, basically, in the home, but they are separate units and owned separately. This is something, our R210 zone was adopted in 2007, which was shortly after we had annexed a lot of the area up on the east side. And when we had annexed a lot of that property, there were a lot of non-conforming duplexes and twin homes. And at that time, we didn't have a zone that really fit that particular housing type. So we actually adopted the R210 with that intent, but unfortunately, we kind of forgot with the twin home just was not addressed specifically this way. So now we're proposing, well, the applicant is proposing to do that, and hopefully could help bring some of those other properties on the east side more into compliance. So the request is to add the land use 1112 under section 1712.020, which is the R210 zone, and it is highlighted in red and it's basically the request is for single-family dwelling attached or twin homes. Twin homes shall meet the following area lot size of 5,000 square feet or 10,000. I think we left something out on this. 10,000 square feet total, 5,000 per lot, individually owned. There's a 40-foot minimum frontage on the public road, and each twin home must maintain the setbacks of the R210 and have a zero lot line, basically the common wall. So let's see, I think I've got another. Yeah. So it will meet the regular setbacks as far as the front and the rear and side. The only difference really is the interior lot is 0 because they share the common wall. The Planning Commission reviewed this on January 6th, and we sent notice to affected entities. Planning Commission, after reviewing it, recommended favorably with a 6-0 vote to adopt this. And the findings are, again, once the general plan provides for flexibility and implementation of the goals and policies. This has been carefully reviewed based on the characteristics of the building design and zoning requirements. Building codes are actually a little different for twin homes than they are duplexes, so this was reviewed by them also. It does meet, it's consistent with Title 17, our land use code or zoning code, and does also meet the general plan and future land use plans. Planning Commission again met with it, reviewed this on January 6th and recommended favorably for that. Bottom line is, it's just now allowing another housing type for specifically owner-occupied rather than rentals. So this is something long overdue, actually.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I'm surprised we haven't had it already.
Susan, do we have anyone that's looking to apply for this?
We do.
Okay.
And you will see that in about next month.
About
we
next
do.
month. Do we have quite a few, or do it just? I'm just curious.
The individual who submitted the application for this also submitted an application for a zone change. We have brought them separately just for make things a little more clear so they don't become convoluted. And plus, if this is not adopted, it would not, they may not necessarily proceed with zone change. I mean, then they would have the option, at least.
Right.
So, yes, but I suspect that once this is approved, we will be seeing more of them because this is kind of the new trend. These are popular units, the twin homes.
Right. Awesome. Thank you.
Do you mean more in the trend, like we're going to see more twin homes coming up?
Yes, there is a new one. You've probably all seen it. It's on Winchester Street and about 525 East.
Yeah.
That's one. Now, the zoning is a little different for that. That's the R&B, but those are really in demand and becoming popular, mainly because they're more affordable as opposed to a single-family home on a single-family lot. Obviously, they're sharing the cost, basically. So, not to say that they're affordable, but they are more affordable.
Well, and also they're putting their money into an investment.
Yes.
And
Right.
that's the bottom.
Yes, and typically when they're owner-occupied, they're a little better maintained usually. So
Where did you say they were at? And Winchester and what?
525 East, new subdivision on the north side of the road there.
Yeah, that's
I think it's
right.
called Fashion Creek. Yeah, Fashion Creek.
Sandy has a lot of twin homes.
Yes, they do. And actually, you know, when we were looking at this, I was surprised how many there are on the east side of Murray that are non-conforming because we didn't have a zone that would fit
In the
that.
annexed area.
Yeah, the annexed area.
Yeah.
There are a lot of them.
Yes,
So,
that's true. That's why I was so surprised that we didn't have a zoning for it. So that's,
yeah, so this is overdue, really.
yeah, I'll say.
Slightly to the side of this, Twin Homes is pretty clear name, right? Twin for two.
Yes.
What zone is for triplet homes, for like
for tri-
townhouses in
okay,
a row? Like
good
what
question.
zone would that be?
Good question. So, row homes
Yeah.
or attached single-family homes,
Right.
anything more than just the two, typically would have to be required in a planned unit development because then it becomes logistically difficult to share the cost of the common area. So
Right.
typically, we require that in a planned unit development, which has a minimum of 2 acres.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. Anything else? Okay.
That's good. Thanks,
And
Susan.
just making sure that it wasn't you up next too. I was like, oh, thank you. It's me up next. All right. We need to talk about city council meals. So the reason that we're talking about this in here is for transparency. It's something that is funded through the council. And just to give a little background, pre-me, there was more meals, right? Like, because I started right at COVID hit. So I think I had one meeting of like what it would typically look like in the before times. But there was meal, department heads would come, and there's some, let me make sure I have my notes. And then we had COVID, and then we went remote, and then we came back, and then we slowly got brave about eating with our masks on and off. And so it was kind of like a snack thing going on. And what we need to touch base with is what we want to do going forward so our staff knows and what we think is reasonable for funds. The real purpose is, first, sometimes we'll have meetings that go like 6 hours, right? And nobody wants their representatives making hangry decisions that are really influential when we can't really go anywhere. And then department heads sometimes have worked all day, and then they come and have to present to us, which they love because we're delightful. But can keep them quite late when they've already worked a full long day. And so it is nice to make sure that they are fed. But I would love to hear from the council members of what you think box lunches. Is there a threshold of how long the meeting is before we fund something like that? What you would like to see going forward so the office has some direction. So I'll turn it over to discussion.
I can give you some background, as can
Yes.
the mayor, because we were there when we decided to do that. And the reason we did was to support and thank our department heads, as you said, who were staying over. And so it was just also a way that we could interact with them as well. So it was, to feed them as well as to help us have a relationship with them. Don't you think, Mayor? I mean, that was a big part of when we decided to do it. We did some research and found out that there were a lot of city councils that were doing that. We had never done it in the past. I think we started it about 6 years ago. And so we thought, well, what a good idea. And it seemed to really be appreciated. And at that time, Jan used to send out an email to all those who were presenting and, just to encourage them to come. And we had a really good turnout. And it was, I think everybody appreciated it. So is there a concern that has changed, or I'm not sure what's motivating this?
I mean, mainly just the huge change in what we've done over the last 2 years, going from meals to snacks to just trying to figure out what makes sense going forward. Because in my 2 years here, I haven't felt accustomed as far as how much food, who's invited. Was it just those presenting? Is it all department heads? And the staff needs to know how much to order and for who. And so having it in a conversation just of what do we want to do moving forward, that's the intent.
Okay.
I know there's been concern about the cost, but I've asked what the budget was, and it doesn't seem crazy. currently the way it is. I think maybe even if we did like a quick RSVP, who's going to be here, who's going to eat, maybe that would help limit the amount that we do buy. Since we do have our own catering business, it is something that can be astronomical. And it's the budget that we currently have. I don't think we're even meeting that threshold at all. So I don't really see a concern. I think like there's certain things like snacks we can kind of refine and maybe not have as many, or just kind of something that's a little bit more tailored to us and not too excessive. But as far as, I think Jennifer's been pretty conservative on the spending. I don't know.
We have been. We've been really trying it. It's just basically what Kat said. I'm new to this position.
Right.
I wasn't here when it started. I didn't know all the ins and outs of how it started. COVID hit, and so we're just trying, Patty and I are just trying to get an idea of what you guys want going forward, who we're supposed to invite. That was a question we kind of always had, just to give us some direction on what we need to do.
I think and lastly, the one thing I do want to say is coming out of COVID and coming from and having new administration, I see the value in sharing a meal with staff and having those conversations, because we weren't really allotted to do that. And I think that's a real great opportunity to do it, where we're not having to spend extra time outside of our duties in building those relationships. So I do see the value in that. I don't think, do we need to get, Outback Steakhouse? No, we don't. Like, I think we can be conservative in what we buy and what it could be.
Been.
Yeah. And
They always have been.
and I know that, but I think that's just kind of my 2 cents on that.
And I want to be clear, this came because Patty and Jennifer asked for it to be discussed. So
Yes,
they're
this
doing
was
an
from
amazing
us.
job. This was not to call them out publicly and be like, they wanted to know what everyone wanted to do. And this was an easy, transparent way we're able to have the conversation.
Okay, so I'm thinking sometimes council meetings go extremely long, like today.
For example.
And there's a bug. Anyways, so we would have like a little bit more food. But on those shorter days where we just have the committee of the whole and a council meeting, maybe we could just have like finger foods, something that we can just eat and be, because not all meetings are going to be like this. So if we could tone down the food a little bit, so less food when the meeting is smaller, a little bit more food when the meetings are something like this. So
what I'm hearing from everyone is for its department heads that are presenting, so that's how we know how much to order. And depending on the length of and I think that's kind of how it's been the last couple months anyway.
And that's hard to anticipate because meetings you don't think are going to go long, you end up expanding. And so,
I think we
that's kind of hard.
Yeah,
to-
I think we should have food at some point. I mean, for whatever meeting, I don't think it should be excessive. Maybe, I don't know how we determine that. But then we also have department heads that are not on the agenda that are here, so that are required to be here. I don't know how that works out too.
Oh, please do.
Just let us know, because we'll make sure. But you've got people like that are running the system, making all
Right.
this work for
Right.
us, staying late
Yep.
at night for us.
And we
so
take them into
we
consideration
want to make
as well,
sure. Okay, we just want to make
as
sure
well as our
we do
IT
what you
help.
say.
Yeah.
I don't know, does an RSVP help? I don't know.
And GL and I will split our meals from now on. So.
Well, obviously, the
No
mayor
food
doesn't get
for
any
you.
food. Don't take GL's food.
It'll also be helpful when we move into the new city hall because we'll have a facility to be able to
Absolutely.
do that. So
Yeah.
now it's hard. I mean, Jennifer and Patty do such a great job given what you've got. So we so appreciate that. I mean, really, and I know department heads and other people that are here late really appreciate it too. So anyway, thank you for doing that.
And I was just going to point out, there is other staff, not just department heads that stay, that we do include. Anyone on the agenda, we basically have been including.
Or has to be here, or those kind of things.
That's what we've been doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that sounds good. Like no major changes wanted. We just wanted to make sure, because really, we started we had 2 meetings pre-COVID. So we just, There's that like return to normal. We don't know what that looks like. So
And then our,
we
so
just want to
true.
touch base.
I'm sure our husbands were feeding us on our Zoom calls. So
Yes, the children were crawling into the office
Yeah.
and handing me snacks. That's how that was
that's
working.
how it was for me too.
Better now. This is better.
I mean, they can still come and do that, Kat.
They could do that. Okay. All right. Okay. If there's nothing else, then we'll move on. But thank you all for sharing. And
Yeah, thank you guys.
I know it can feel a little
you want-
silly.
Do you want suggestions? I mean, I don't know. Did you want anything more specific than that, or is that good?
No, I
Good
think
direction.
we've done pretty well. Like you said, we're
Yeah.
very conscious of our budget. But, no, it was just a question of who is included in this. Oh, I did have one more question.
Yeah.
We've been setting out that half hour from 6 to 6:30 between minutes to eat. Does that work? Is that a good time? Do you guys like that big long break?
Boy, I think that's the best time. I mean,
Yeah. I think it's nice to have that
That's
break between the
consistent.
two, especially if it's a heavy committee of the whole, because sometimes it can be a heavy committee of the whole. I think the 30-minute break is a good time to, if there's constituents, you can kind of meet with them, eat, use the facilities, come back.
And we'll just do our best to plan the committee of the whole so we don't have those like hours. We every once in a while, it's a weird day, isn't it? Where you have like a huge gap, but
Sometimes, yeah, but that also helps if committee of the whole goes over a little bit too.
Gives us
to
a
have a half
buffer.
hour, so it gives you guys some extra
Yeah.
time. Okay,
Yeah.
nope, I think those are all my questions.
sounds good. All right. And then Rosalba, it's you with legislative updates.
All right.
staff.
So, and we got an agenda yesterday. So if you need a copy of what I'm about to present, I'm sure Jennifer can get that out and we will include it to post, I'm assuming. Could we include this into the packet online? Or, hey, yeah, okay. So we are now in the third week of the session and it has been fun. To say the least. We sat in a committee, well, I'll go through everything, but I'll just start with LPC and the Legislative Policy Committee that we are a part of through with other cities, Utah leagues and towns and cities, sorry. And we meet once every week on Mondays, and we meet with other council members and mayors, and we vote and decide on what position we want to take on different legislative bills that are coming up. To start with, I am going to go down my list. Oh, I didn't include. Oh, this one's different for some reason. Okay, so I'm going to go down my list. With HB 151, which touches on retail incentives, the league is opposing this bill. This bill potentially can put cities into rivalry for large and small businesses alike. And they also would like to ban the use of public funds for doing this. This bill will be reviewed in the House Business and Labor Committee. So I'm going to include the committees and where they're kind of standing each bill. That way, if you would like to continue the conversation, you can go ahead and contact our local representatives or anybody on that committee. But the bill currently is sitting at the House Business and Labor Committee. Our reps are Representative Wheatley. I've been in discussion with him about this, and he is opposed. But feel free to write anybody on that committee as well.
does it have support?
No, we're opposing the bill.
I know, but
Oh, it has his
generally,
support?
yeah, does
Yeah.
it have legislative support?
Yeah.
What's your sense of that?
I think the league their sense was that they're kind of in negotiations going back and forth. I think they're trying to take a big stance on it. And I don't have my notes with me, or I would go into more detail about it, but I know that the league feels a little bit more confident that they can actually have conversations with some of the legislatures this year, whereas in some of the special sessions and the way that the session started, it felt like, are we going to be able to get into a room with everybody, with the decision makers on these bills, to have these conversations and negotiate our terms? And it's looking like in the third week, they feel a little bit more confident. So this bill can have other substitutions. I can't remember what substitution it's at. I think it might be 2. They might be on the
That's
second.
okay. Yeah, that's
second
okay.
reading
I was
for
just
it.
curious what kind of support it had.
That one was a little bit more contentious, and let me see if I have my notes right here in addition to. Okay, I'm going to move on to Senate Bill 110, water as a part of a general plan. We are supporting this bill as a league, and the bill is have cities develop a plan in their general plans in conserving water. A lot of cities are already doing this. I think they're just trying to tackle the cities that aren't. It's currently in the Senate Rules Committee, and our representative is Jenny Iwamoto. HB 95, landscaping requirement prohibition. We are opposing this bill. It prohibits certain government or private entities from requiring a property owner or resident to plant or maintain lawn or turf. The league is working on substitutes with this right now. Again, 151, they're negotiating with the sponsor on this. It's currently in the Senate Rules Committee, and I think it might be in its second reading as well. But they feel pretty confident that they can make some changes to that one.
Good, I hope so.
Again, it's in the Senate Rules Committee. HB 242, secondary watering metering amendments. The league is watching this. It's currently in the House Rules Committee, but the bill addresses secondary water metering and implementation of mandating throughout the state and not just for new developments. There are a lot of concerns in the league about the price tag of this and the aggressive timeline. And I've kind of discussed it with Danny already, but that it's in the House Rules Committee right now, and we don't have a representative, but the chair is Representative Timothy Hawks and Vice Chair Corrine Listenby, sorry. HB 140, government attorney fees amendments. We are opposing this bill. This bill allows a private party to recover attorney and expert fees as a prevailing party in certain civil actions against government entities. Currently, this bill is in House Rules Committee. The chair, same people, Timothy Hawks, and Vice Chair Karen Listenby. I don't remember, we didn't really go into too much detail on this, but they are looking at it. They're watching it and opposing it. Senate Bill 115, Firearm Preemption Amendments. We are opposing. This bill addresses the legislature's preemption of the field of firearm regulation for the state. I think the biggest concern on that is any government facilities. I'm trying to remember. Let me see. There's just concerns about where, and it's in the second reading now, and it's in the Senate Natural Resources, Agriculture, and Environmental Committee. So Senator Jenny Iwamoto is on that committee, and Senator Gene Davis. SB 46, Cannabis Patient Protection Amendments. We are opposing this. It's in its third reading and amends the protections for medical cannabis patients, including public employees, to protect the holding of medical cannabis card and medical cannabis recommendations, and makes technical and conforming changes. It's also, that bill is in the Government Operations Interim Committee, again with Jenny Iwamoto, Senator Jenny Iwamoto, and Senator Gene Davis. There were some discussions on that in regards to the federal regulations and what we can and what they can't do. Cannabis is such a tricky conversation in that regard. HB 181, Railroad Crossing Maintenance Amendments, and we are in support of this bill. This bill amends provisions related to allocations of duties between the Public Service Commission and the Department of Transportation pertaining to safety and oversight of railroads and crossings. This bill made it out of committee yesterday, out of the Transportation Committee, and is coming to a vote. There are a lot of cities that were concerned about this because of the regulations and costs that it could impact on cities. HB 135, open public meeting comment requirements. We are opposing this bill. This bill modifies the Open and Public Meetings Act relating to open meeting requirements. Currently, this bill is in House Government Operations Committee, and Representative Corey Malloy is the chair, and Representative Norman Thurston is the vice chair. So those are some of the hot ticket items as in week 3. Things can change tomorrow or Monday by the time we go back. I did sit in the House Transportation Committee to support Representative Wheatley for his noise pollution amendments bill, and removing and kind of regulating the noisy, mufflers on cars. I've personally have gotten a lot of complaints from citizens about this, so I spoke in support of him. It did pass, and it went onto the House floor today and is in its 3rd reading. So the co-sponsor on that is Representative Dunnigan. So I think it will pass. Any questions? Does that give you a pretty comprehensive update? I'll bring another update at the next council meeting.
No, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
Sorry, I was deep in bill land.
I know, you can get lost. I find myself doing that. I avoided doing this until today because I'm like, I'm going to get into the weeds of this. And
Yeah, absolutely. Jennifer, do we have any announcements?
I do not.
Okay, then we are adjourned until 5 o'clock.